For most of modern history, running an economy required an immense physical bureaucracy. Millions of clerks, managers, and analysts manually processing paper records to coordinate trade, assess credit, and manage labor. The first digital enterprise tools entered this environment strictly as instruments of support. Spreadsheets and early databases digitized the filing cabinets to accelerate calculation. Yet, through all of this, the final bottleneck remained human. Software assisted the workflow, but a manager still reviewed the file, a loan officer still approved the credit, and a professional carried the formal responsibility for the outcome. This administrative bottleneck mirrored the physical limits of traditional industry. Scaling a business meant a proportional increase in factories, assembly lines, and human supervision. Growth was slow, expensive, and constrained by the limits of human coordination. Prior to the algorithm economy, technology increased the pace of work, but it did not govern the rules of economic interaction. It was a tool, not an authority. A shift occurred the moment software stopped waiting for human approval. Over the last decade, digital systems crossed the threshold, from passive operational tools into active structures of economic execution. We are witnessing the industrialization of judgment. Credit models now filter borrowers before a loan officer ever sees an application. Dynamic pricing engines adjust costs in milliseconds without a sales manager's intervention. Logistics platforms dispatch labor and assign routes instantly based on real-time telemetry. Look at a traditional stock exchange. Market friction was visible, loud, and profoundly physical. Today, automated execution has replaced that friction with invisible speed, resolving complex economic decisions at a scale no human could track. Corporate boards often label this digital transformation. That language masks the reality. This is a deliberate redistribution of market power. Because economic outcomes are now pre-structured by code, the true center of institutional authority no longer sits at the manager's desk. It is migrated directly into the digital infrastructure. To understand how this infrastructure governs, we have to discard the outdated assumption that data is just a ledger of completed business transactions. This diagram shows the modern economy's true raw material, behavioral data. Organizations don't wait for a purchase. They track scroll depth, cursor hesitation, location pings, and cart abandonment. Millions of these interactions aggregate continuously, flowing into a centralized pipeline beneath the market. People often say data is the new oil. The metaphor fails. Oil depletes when consumed. Behavioral data can be copied, recombined, and reused infinitely without losing its utility. Look at how this system maps relational data. By clustering nodes with similar behaviors, the algorithm generates a predictive tag for a completely blank node. It creates predictive power over individuals who never supplied direct information in the first place. This relational capacity upgrades data. It ceases to be a mere byproduct of business and becomes the primary operating system for market coordination. Consequently, the entity that owns this data infrastructure inherently dictates the foundational rules of market participation. This infrastructure generates a structural advantage, asymmetric visibility. Standard participants operate with a narrow field of vision, knowing only their immediate route or inventory. This graphic contrasts that limited view against the platform's panoramic view. The vendor on the left sees static performance metrics. The platform on the right observes the entire ecosystem's demand curves, behavioral drop-offs, and competitor pricing in real time. That asymmetry turns the platform into a machine for strategic learning. It constantly adjusts the vendor's visibility metrics based on aggregate shifts the vendor is entirely blind to. Platforms weaponize this vantage point. They deploy personalized, dynamic pricing to pinpoint the maximum amount a specific consumer is willing to pay, extracting the absolute maximum consumer surplus. The same logic manages labor. Ride-hailing and delivery apps use targeted algorithmic incentives, like personalized surge pricing, to manipulate the supply of gig workers, steering them to specific geographic blocks without ever issuing a formal mandate. The power imbalance is stark. Participants must blindly guess why their sales dropped or their income shifted, while the platform operates with perfect internal intelligence. Asymmetric visibility is the precise mechanism that converts a platform from a neutral intermediary into an absolute market governor. Gathering the data and seeing the market is only the setup. Authority is exercised through how that information is interpreted and deployed against users. This process relies on probabilistic classification. Chaotic user data streams into the algorithm and is instantly sorted into strict, color-coded categories like high churn risk. Under the old model, governance was retrospective. Now, governance is anticipatory. Watch this user node. It is blocked from transacting based entirely on its assigned probability score. This happens constantly. Financial networks freeze transactions before fraud is confirmed. Automated hiring software filters out resumes before a human ever schedules an interview. The result is that institutions no longer manage individuals based on concrete factual actions. They manage populations based on machine-inferred futures. Sorting people by statistical likelihood reconfigures the balance of freedom and control, erecting hidden barriers to entry across employment, credit, and commerce. In the algorithm economy, economic opportunity is distributed based on statistical plausibility rather than human truth. If these systems strip away human context and operate in total opacity, why do institutions so eagerly surrender their authority to them? The primary driver is functional overload. The sheer volume of modern data makes manual human review impossible. Organizations adopt automated logic out of administrative necessity, but they also rely on the deceptive rhetorical power of quantification. A mathematical score appears neutral, it looks objective. This cleanly masks the crude proxies and historical biases buried deep inside the training data. Automated governance is not adopted because it is morally superior. It's adopted because it provides a cost-effective, auditable shield that protects institutional power from public scrutiny. Combining continuous data infrastructure, asymmetric visibility, and probabilistic classification, the entire architecture of the economy changes. Textbooks assume platforms create perfectly competitive markets, but as this algorithmic layer warps the classic supply and demand lines, we see a different reality. Platforms reallocate friction, inserting themselves at the transaction point to siphon off data and revenue, shrinking margins while centralizing coordination. This gives the platform its ultimate leverage, the unilateral ability to dictate visibility. Formal market entry is meaningless. Anyone can open an e-commerce storefront or a gig work app, but if the algorithm does not rank and recommend you, you do not economically exist. By controlling visibility and behavioral nudges, platforms have transformed open, neutral arenas into fully programmable spaces, designed from the ground up for extraction. Current regulatory frameworks are entirely failing to grasp this reality. Competition laws were written to police physical monopolies and overt price fixing. They are blind to infrastructural lock-in, massive data asymmetry, and algorithmic self-preferencing. Corporate marketing hides this extraction behind friendly terms like digital transformation, but beneath that sleek interface lies a rigid matrix of automated command structures. These automated decision systems do not stand outside of institutional power. They are its newest, most consequential architecture. The true currency of the algorithm economy is not efficiency, it is total interpretive power and automated control.